I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we've got another batch of visitor questions that we would like to answer. Remember, if you have questions you'd like to ask the museum, drop them in a comment down below or shoot us a message on social media. And we tend to answer these about every other week. And if we don't get to yours today, you've asked a question in the past, it's because we can get a fair number in that time, and sometimes we bump it back to later weeks. So our first question is, what can you tell us about the ice cream machines? The book USS Iowa at War says that an Iowa battleship in World War II could produce 9,600 gallons of ice cream a month, close to half a liter or almost a pint per sailor per day, given a crew of 2,700. Are they the same ones for World War II, or did they get replaced over the decades? So, they did get replaced over the decades. I don't have the ship's World War II ice cream machines. I'm not entirely sure what they look like, and I haven't read USS Iowa at War. This is what the ice cream machines would have looked like in World War II. New Jersey has at least 2 of them here on the forward mess deck, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's other smaller ones in other parts of the ship as well. So, these battleships during World War II were designed to and did operate in the South Pacific. And while the battleships and aircraft carriers had ice cream machines, a lot of the smaller ships did not. So, oftentimes, the larger ships would make ice cream and give them to the smaller ships. And again, just because they had the capacity to make that much ice cream doesn't necessarily mean that they were. I remember going into a generic fast food restaurant and asking for a frosted ice cream sundae generic beverage, and them telling you that the machine is down because they're cleaning it, is what they say, because it's broken. They would have absolutely been doing that on these ships too. So even though they had the stated capacity, they weren't necessarily making a pint per sailor per day. But at the same time, you got 2,700 18-year-old boys who really needed to eat their feelings.
So our next question pertains to how much food the battleship can carry and how long that would last. So the battleship is designed to stay at sea for about 30 days at a time. There are a ton of storage spaces around the ship that can hold dry stores or canned goods or things like that. But then there's also huge refrigerated spaces like this one that we're in right now. This is one of 7 or 8 refrigerators of about this size that you can access from the berthing spaces aft under the crew's mess spaces. These spaces are large and open, and they're actually encased in the armored citadel, so they are providing additional buoyancy to the ship. Different spaces are for different specific foods, so vegetables, meats, dairy, and eggs. So there's different refrigerated spaces for each of those. And at any given time, the galley would be coming down here to draw food for the next meal to take it back up above.
Our next question is, can a 40mm shell hold a VT fuse? So the VT fuse, or variably timed fuse, was one of those war-winning innovations that the Allies came up with near the end of the war. The idea was, can you make basically a sensor for the nose of your fuse so that it can sense an aircraft or the ground and go off just before it hits. Earlier fuses were timed. You had to guesstimate, sometimes analog computer assisted, when your projectile was going to hit a target and time it so that it explodes right at that time. Believe it or not, this was very difficult and not the most effective way. By 1943 or so, the Allies had created a radar that was both robust enough to survive being shot out of a gun and small enough to fit in the nose cone of some artillery shells, which greatly improved its ability to explode when it hit a target. The radar sensed when it was about to hit a plane and would explode, and it wouldn't explode otherwise. So you aren't doing like at Pearl Harbor where shells were accidentally falling among the civilian population. Or when you're doing shore bombardment, it would explode right before you hit the ground, so soldiers sheltered in place would be hit instead of hitting the ground and exploding and sending shrapnel above. So the 40 millimeter round just is not big enough to take a VT fuse. The smallest round that I am aware of that ever had a VT fuse was a 3-inch shell like this one. You can see the size difference between this and the 40 millimeter. And that's one of the reasons why in the late war and immediate post-war years, the Navy started to remove 40 millimeter guns from ships and replace them with 3-inch guns.
Our next question has to do with flooding the magazines. How do you do it? How do you pump it out? Is it a reversible process? And a couple other similar things about how this system works. So, flooding the magazines is accomplished primarily from Damage Control Central, which is the space we're in now. This is where the damage control officer, one of the engineering officers, would be in charge of coordinating the various repair parties that are being sent around the ship. So any damage taken is reported at this space, and then the damage control officer dispatches his 11 repair parties from here. Now, if the magazines are threatened and an order to flood magazines is given, there is a location near the magazines where you can flood from. And because this is a battleship, I assume there are redundant positions as well. But the primary station is here in Damage Control Central. And that's what we're looking at here. These are for flooding the 16-inch magazines. Now, there are pumps that pump seawater into a sprinkler system, which will deluge the magazines and flood them. Theoretically, we're at general quarters and the space is watertight. So we're more or less flooding the space. There are not pumps or drains I'm aware of in these spaces to dewater them afterwards. This isn't really a reversible process. If your magazines are severely threatened, this isn't something where you put some water on them and then you drain it out and you continue using that gun. You flood those spaces and then you go back into port for serious repairs. In theory, we have damage control equipment on board with submersible pumps and eductors that can be taken into those spaces to dewater them, but primarily that space is no longer used until the ship goes back into port. So the last question of the day has to do with the anti-aircraft armament of these ships during World War II. This is what the Iowa-class battleships looked like around 1945 at the end of the war. And the question was, did these ships carry guns on the bow at that time? The answer is yes. All 4 Iowa-class battleships were fitted with a pair of quadruple 40mm guns here, a pair of 20mm guns here, and another pair of 20mm guns here at the bow. Now, on New Jersey and Missouri, this special gun tub at the bow was removed entirely by the 1980s. In Iowa and Wisconsin, the guns were removed in the 1950s, but the gun tub is still there. So if you go to Norfolk or Los Angeles, you can see those guns. Here's another model on the same scale of New Jersey in the 1980s. Here you can see the footprint of the 40mm guns, and you can see that the 20mm tub is removed. New Jersey can be picked out from pictures because her tubs were planked around, they weren't cut flush, so you can still see where they were. The other Iowas had those cut off entirely and then planked over, so you've got no hint of those bow-mounted 40mm guns. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you have comments or questions, drop them in the comment section down below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible, possibly even in a video form like this one. If you
are looking for ways that you can support the museum or our YouTube channel, check out the description down below for ways to donate. And remember to like, share, and subscribe so that you're notified when we put out more content. Thanks for watching.